Welcome to 13 art movements children should know. Let's get this started with. And I'm going to try to do this as fast as possible. Let's get this started with. Our first one is the Romanesque art. Romanesque art, and it's called the art of faith because it's talking about Jesus Christ and all the others. Back then, art was terrible because, well, people just kind of started learning how to do these things, and art wasn't that widespread too. Anyways, here people back then only had their time that was worth drawing were actually, which could make the dollar bills, were actually these little historical Christ stuff, these Bible stories. And so this one is talking. This one is a picture of Christ with the Bible here, I'm guessing, surrounded by angels. Angels, 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 angels. And with that, they drew all this so that, well, other normal people, common people who can't read or write, can know the Bible and religion as well. Alright, our next one is the Gothic art. Now, the Gothic art is also called a little graceful art too, because it's a bit more graceful compared to, well, this little monstrosity of flatness. Here, they have more shape too, and their robes and their clothes seem to be better too. Maria the Saint and Jesus the Christ, the baby. Speaking of which, and all these other people who are here holding pilgrimage to the Son of God. And speaking of which, there are way more people up here who are doing that as well. And this is just these Gothic art. As these medieval cities continue to grow, you pretty much need Gothic arts and these styles, and they're elegant compared to the heavy Romanesque style. And these show people and objects in the forms too. This one, however, the downside is they all have the same expressions on their faces. Alright, our next art style is a bit more lively. It's called the Renaissance. The Renaissance. And the Renaissance here is honestly way better than what we had from the previous ones too. At least now we have a few better drawings. And other great side about this is that, well, there are better people seem to be drawing better too. There's shading, there's also more depth. The clothes look more real, the faces look more real. Even the background looks more real. And this is the Renaissance. By the way, this is called the Piero della Francesco Portraits of Federico da Manfredi and his wife Battista Sforza. I'm pretty sure you can guess who's who. And this is created from 1465 to 66. It's basically just a bunch of tempera on panels. And also, one more thing about the Renaissance is that they also still drew ancient styles of drawings. Here it's called the Last Supper, where Jesus himself basically said, "This is the time where I will die. This is the place where I will die. And with that, one of you will kill me," he said. And this guy here, I forgot which one, this guy here, what was it, this guy? Will be the killers too. And here, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry for the low quality, but hey, at least it's better than nothing. It's still, it's not that flat, but it's also three-dimensional too. All this goes into the perspective point, which is on Christ's head himself. I messed it up. Like this. If you draw a line from this room to Christ's head, and you draw from Christ's head to the edge of this room, you can see that the lines actually kind of converge on Christ's head. And this is called perspective painting. At least that's what we learned in art class. And a lot of people still drew a lot. A lot of people still had their own ideas of life too. Here we also have the Baroque style. The Baroque, passionate style. And of course, art does not only include paintings, it also includes statues. Speaking of which, here are the statues. I'm kind of creeped out by these bodiless people right here. I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be angels, but shouldn't they have bodies? And this one here, this saint here, this Christian here, is actually seems, if you look at her expression a bit more closely, she seems to be, how should I put this? Happy, da 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 da, as well as a little terrified, at the same time. And that's literally what she's probably feeling then and now, which is probably what talking to God must feel like. Alright, I got all these photos from a book, so I'm sorry for this inconvenient line. Alright, another Baroque artists are also pretty overdramatic. All these people seem to be like actors on a stage when they're actually people who volunteered to go defend their city. And this is called the Night Watch. It's actually called the Shooting Company of France Ban in Conques. but hey, who want to watch that? All right, our next one is the neoclassicism. The neoclassicism. The neoclassicism. And neoclassicism is like the classics. It goes ahead and it thinks people here seem to want to go back to the old classic styles too. And these neoclassical artists wanted to abandon the Baroque style, and instead they wanted to go ahead and capture the extreme severe beauty of our little people, of the people, and the ideals of the ancient arts. It goes back to classic times, except it's like neoclassics. This one here is Jacques Louis David's portrait of Madame Racaille, where it just goes ahead. It's a portrait of her laying on a bed, and somehow pillows still exist. Of course, they exist. And just like the olden days, this might seem like something that was drawn in the olden times, but once you see what it's actually made of, watercolors, graphite, and with literal no shading and just these simple lines, you can go ahead and draw all this. And the only shading I see here is with the hair. That's the only shading I see. This was John Flaxman's Alexa and Adamantum. And they loved ancient, like, neoclassical artists loved ancient Greeks and their Romans and their ways of pottery and their drawing, so they drew something like this. Alright, finally we will go ahead and we end up in the era of Romanticism. Romanticism here is actually like beauty and nature. It's just basically saying that you are in the beauty and you're in nature, and romantic artists were inspired by the power of nature, which is why they draw a lot of nature too. They go ahead and romanticize nature, shall we call it that? These people are looking at nature. There's withering hollow tree, this moon over here with the crescent moon, these trees in the background, I assume they're trees. And they draw so many things too. And this painting itself looks like it makes the whole sky short. There's splotches of white, there's splotches of blue everywhere. Some places, but most of the time you might think that it's just the mist and the fog plus a lot of rain that's like covering the camera up. And this bridge, by the way, is real. The real bridge here still exists. It still stands near the town of Maidenhead in England, which is just west of London. So you can just go ahead and see this bridge, take this painting with you, take the picture of this painting with you, and then compare it to the real bridge on a rainy day with a train going there. And with that, you could probably take a snapshot of the real thing. Next up, we have realism. Realism. Now, in the 1800s, artists were actually becoming more interested in how the poor people, the common people, were working, how their lives were. And so they went ahead and they depicted a lot of their paintings with people in poor clothes, in harsh working conditions. This one is a burial at Ornans, which is also called a painting of human figures in the history of the burial at Ormans. That's pretty much the only realism painting that's actually worth looking at. That's a little happy. And going back to the light mood here, we have Impressionism. Impressionism here is actually like art and the fleeting movement. Or go ahead, and it's so lively too. It's very lively. This is the Dance at the La Molin de la Galette. It was painted in 1876 in Paris, Musée d'Orsay, Paris. But by the way, that's the museum of the name, Musée d'Orsay. And with that, you go ahead and see the dances in France, and no wonder they call French people very good partiers. There are so much more Impressionism meetings too. Edgar Allan Small, dancer, aged 14, made this statue after seeing a ballet dancer finish a very incredible but also very difficult dance in the ballet, and then he built this. And assuming this is real fabric, while the girl herself is actually built from clay. One more thing, Claude Monet also drew this here too. If you look at just one part of the painting, it might look like a bunch of paint splotches, but that's what Monet wanted to do. He drew a bunch of paint splotches and then combined those together, and in turn it gave him this painting of a pond that he drew that he worked hours on. This is called Water Lilies, by the way. Alright, our next art movement is called the Art Nouveau. It's French. Okay, it's French. French people, please read it for me. Art Nouveau. And this is the art of blending. Where go ahead, lots of people went back then found out about the Chinese and Japanese art, and then they wanted to combine Western and Eastern arts together too. And so they combined this. Voila, the art of view, an art of blending. By 1900, Europeans were actually learning more about nature and about societies outside Europe. And this is a new style of art would actually go ahead and arise at this time. And blending the human world and the natural world and the cultures of the West and the East places, that's perfect too. They now only the face looks real here. The rest just looks somewhat fake. Also, the body can't be that slim, can it? And here's a little jewel representing the person who drew it. His name, Gustav Klimt. And this is like based on Japanese artwork, and with this Japanese artwork basis on it, we can go ahead and immediately see that there's all these women are just nature-like bodies, have leaf-like bodies. Even their toes are even their toes are a little weird too, and all of them except for these two over here have roses on both sides of their hair. They look really fake. The hair looks really fake to me, in my opinion. This was supposed to be the painting on the wall of the restaurant. This was supposed to be the painting on the wall of the restaurant, by the way. And then we have expressionism. Okay, fine. How many more movements do we have? Like a lot, unfortunately. Now, expressionism here is like colors, shapes, and feelings. And with these expressionisms, after centuries of making art that literally imitated the outside world, European painters started to alter reality to express their creators' own choices. Now, Marc Chagall actually drew this called the Paris Through the Window because, well, he's Jewish and Paris was the best place for where they accepted his Jewish identity too. And he expressed himself too. Oh, by the way, all these colors don't match in real life because this is the author's imagination. I'm not sure why he put a human face on a cat, so that's just messed up in my opinion. And this painting is called The Yellow Bull, the Yellow Cow, actually. The Yellow Cow, this was drawn here. The yellow cow was supposed to, like, he drew a cow because he liked cows, he liked animals, and the artist here called Franz Malk wanted to express himself. However, he drew the colors because, well, he's using his imagination. And finally, we have Cubism. Now, Cubism, I've drawn some Cubist arts before. It's not that popular. It's objects, right? It's regular paintings, but you dissect it into geometric shapes, and then with that, you put them anywhere on the place too. Also, you could, if you want, just go ahead and also draw some. You put some make it a collage as well. But usually, though, you want to make sure that it's a bit cube-like. Instead of that, you go ahead and add that. Let me draw a cubist painting real quick. And my item here is supposed to be this. I was attempting to draw this cello over here, but that failed. That failed. And for next up, we have surrealism. Now, surrealism is called surrealism because, well, it's not that real, but it seems so real, but it's also false too. Look at this. The buildings and the trees seem to be like that they're in nighttime with this little simple street lamp going ahead and illuminating this whole street. However, if you look up at the sky, it's impossibly bright. Now, these two normal things that can't be put together are put together, and that's what makes it eerie and creepy too, and also very extraordinary and frightening. Another classic example of this is this melting clocks called The Persistence of Memory, and he goes ahead, the creator, Salvador Dali, went ahead and drew all these melting clocks because he wanted to remind people that time seems to go at different paces at different times of life. And our final artwork movement here, finally, is called pop art. Now, pop art is actually more like advertisement. Advertisements, some paintings are actually done in the ways advertisements are done. If you see all these Coca-Cola bottles, they seem identical except for their colors and things, but the outline is the same. In fact, the artist here, Andy Warhol, drew all these 112, I did the math, 112 green bottles, and with that, he went ahead and drew all this using the same techniques that advertisements use to print their ads. And pop art is actually drawn to go ahead and poke fun at their Americans' love of mass-produced products like French fries, burgers, Coca-Cola, and Pepsi and Fanta. And with that, that's basically pop art. It's just art about pop. Pop art is about commercials and something to make people smile at. And that's it. That's the all the art movements that have we've seen. In fact, I've actually seen a few of them on my travels in the actual places. I've been to the Louvre before. I've been to the Orsay, the the French word Orsay in Paris, and that's it. It's a great place. All these art movements are awesome. And is this necessary for you to pass your test? Maybe in art class, but unless you're going to be an artist, you probably won't need to memorize all this. But it's great to know about this anyway. I'm definitely gonna memorize pop art, and that's it. I hope to see you guys soon in the next episode. And so until the next time, John out. Peace. Bye bye. Wear a helmet.